Alright guys, today we have more PlayStation and Xbox news to go over and talk about. We have a few topics we're going to be covering in this video, so before we get into it, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button to help the video out, and hit the subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel. But we're starting here with the confirmation that E3 2021 is happening. It will be an all-digital event, and interestingly enough, Sony is once again not part of it. I think it's particularly interesting this time around because both Microsoft and Nintendo are part of E3, and some people are expressing some concern at the fact that Sony is apparently not going to partake in it. So I just want to go over this information with you guys, let you know who is partaking in E3, when it's going to be going down, and give my thoughts on the next proper PlayStation event. I have actually seen some people fear that because Sony is not partaking in E3 2021, and because they've been so quiet recently, they're actually not going to have an event in 2021 of any sort. I think that's highly unlikely, and I will go into why I think that's not going to happen, and you shouldn't worry about that. But let's go over the information here first. It says, after a number of leaks last week regarding the ESA's plans for E3 this year, the organizers have finally confirmed E3 2021 and started revealing the first official details about the event. E3 2021, rebranded as the Electronic Entertainment Experience, at least for this year, is happening between June 12th and June 15th as an all-digital event. And so it goes on to say confirmed exhibitors so far include Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two Interactive, Warner Bros. Games, and Koch Media. Notably absent from the list are Sony, Activision Blizzard, Square Enix, EA, Bandai Namco, and more. While some of these publishers could end up being late sign-ons, it's unlikely that Sony will participate in E3 2021. The company first stepped away from E3 in 2019 and again announced its intentions to not participate in E3 2020 before the show was ultimately canceled. So this is pretty interesting to me because you're seeing a clear divide. There are certainly a lot of publishers that are on board with E3 and bringing it back, but there's also seemingly just as many, if not more, publishers that have no plans to participate. I think Sony being the biggest one here, right? It goes on to say, and I wanted to read this part to you guys because I do think it is important. Reports have also indicated that confirmed exhibitors may not be showing some support for the ESA and E3, or they may be showing support for the ESA and E3 while saving their biggest reveals and announcements for their own independent shows outside of E3 2021 rather than as part of the virtual event. So basically what this is saying, if this report is to be believed, is that many of these publishers are not going to be showing their big surprises at E3. They're actually going to save those big surprises for their own independent events. So it's kind of like they're half supporting E3, half not. We don't know if that's going to be true. We're going to have to watch. I mean, me personally, I'm not against E3 coming back, obviously, but I don't think there's any denying that it's just not the same. It's not what it used to be. That doesn't mean we can't enjoy what we see or get from it, but I think E3's golden age is kind of over. I think it's been over for a little while, and I think that the future at this point really is the overwhelming majority of these publishers kind of having their own events. It does kind of spread them out more, and it does kind of make things a little bit more chaotic, but you know, if a publisher thinks that they can save money and do their own event and it can have just as much of an impact, then that's what they're going to do. And that's exactly what Sony has been doing. I've seen some people say that, you know, this maybe is a mistake for Sony to not partake in E3 again. I don't think that's the case at all. If you go look at the Future of Gaming event that Sony had last year, just the English live stream alone, not taking into account the multiple other live streams they did with different languages, that garnered over 15 million views, which is pretty insane. And, you know, they did have the PS5, and I've seen some people say that that's the only reason why it got that many views. I think it certainly helped bring in more viewership, but I'm fairly certain that this year, for example, if Sony were to do something very similar to that, they're going to bring in maybe not as many views, but close to it. They're definitely going to bring in a lot of views, certainly enough to justify doing their own event. Because people are going to want to show up to see what Sony is going to have to say, especially after being quiet for so long. And so to kind of pivot and talk briefly about Sony's event, Again, some people are concerned that Sony's not going to be doing anything this year. We obviously have not received any official confirmation from Sony themselves, so I cannot sit here and say definitively that yes, Sony will have an event, because I don't know that for certain. However, I think it is extremely unlikely that Sony would spend, all of these months recently just kind of being quiet, kind of being in the shadows, not really being that loud. I mean, they have made some announcements, but overall being relatively quiet, especially compared to Microsoft and seeing the momentum they're gaining recently, to then just remain this quiet or this silent all throughout the summer when every other publisher is making big announcements and reveals. I just don't think that makes sense. If Sony were to do that, that would be a major problem that we would have to obviously discuss, and I think it would be a very bad sign. But I absolutely do not think that's what Sony's doing. I think Sony is going to have their own event, and it's going to be pretty big. I don't know if it's the only event that Sony will do this year. It could be, but I think sometime in June, I think that's most likely when they're going to come out and they're going to let us know, hey, show up for this date. We're going to have the Future of Gaming Part 3 or whatever they want to call it. Maybe they'll call it something else. And they're going to have a bunch of new games to show. They're going to show more gameplay. They're going to show us more of the games that we know are coming in the next year. I think that that's likely what will happen. And I think that when we see how excited people get for that, when we see how many people show up for that event, I think it's going to be made clear once again why Sony does not feel the need to partake in E3 at all. I've seen a lot of people say that E3 actually needs Sony, not the other way around. And honestly, I am inclined to agree with that, because Sony's doing just fine doing their own events. And, it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. So, Sony is most likely going to have their own event. We have to wait for official confirmation, but it's extremely unlikely that they won't do anything. I mean, that would just be, frankly, shocking and insane to me if Sony were to decide to not do anything over the course of this summer. And so let me know down in the comments below whether or not you like Sony doing their own events, or if you would like to see them return to E3, and let me know what you think Sony has in store for us this summer when it comes to announcements and reveals. But I want to talk briefly about Microsoft and their Bethesda event, because apparently we have a insider letting us know what to expect, whether or not these two events are going to be separated. Like, is Bethesda going to have their own separate event like they have in the past, or are they going to be folded into Microsoft's event? Because obviously Microsoft's going to have their big event as well, maybe at E3. But it says here, according to journalist Jeff Grubb, this is actually going to be the case. The fact that they're going to remain separate to some extent. Taking to Twitter, Jeff Grubb stated that the Xbox and Bethesda E3 events will be part of the same stream, but they will be separate conferences. The Xbox conference, according to Grubb, will lead directly into Bethesda's show, but there will be a delineation period between the two. That does, of course, make you wonder exactly what the combined length of these two shows is going to be. So E3 2021, as we said, takes place between June 12th and 15th. So there's still a few months left before it kicks off. Concrete details on, who is involved and all that are starting to come out. So it's going to be interesting. I think that this is something, honestly, PlayStation fans should pay attention to, because I suspect that Microsoft is going to be bringing the heat in a way that they never have before now that they have Bethesda. And this is another reason why I wanted to use this as another way to kind of show you why it's very unlikely Sony's not going to do anything this year. This is going to be a big year for both Sony and Microsoft, in my opinion, this summer specifically. The way I view it is we're looking at two titans that are getting ready to clash. I think Sony still has the edge, honestly, just with the type of games that they're going to show, the amount of excitement behind their games. But I think this is truly going to be the first time in many years where Microsoft may actually match it. They may actually, bring the heat in a big way, where it's like, okay, Sony's going to have to really start to try to push to do even more, right? Because that's just how many things Microsoft is going to bring to the table between, their studios and Bethesda. That's what I suspect anyway. I know that Xbox fans are obviously expecting some very, very big things between Starfield, Fable. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this year could be the biggest year for Microsoft that we ever see in terms of announcements, the amount of stuff that they're going to show. And I genuinely think that Sony's going to have to contend with that for like the first time in a long time. I feel like in the past, it's always been kind of like, oh, you know, we know Sony's going to bring the heat and Microsoft will try to match it, but they usually can't, or they struggle to do so. You know, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but I'm certainly not underestimating what Microsoft is going to bring to the table this year. And frankly, I think it would be extremely wise of Sony to also not underestimate what Microsoft is going to bring to the table. And so I have a feeling the reason why Sony is remaining so quiet recently is because they do have a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and they plan to basically, you know, wake up at some point and just, you know, lay it all out. That's what I suspect. It might not necessarily go down that way, but that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, I just wanted to take some time here to talk about this with you guys. It's really just, I guess, one long topic where we just talk about E3, but I think it's an exciting conversation because there are, I mean, you could argue that this year and what Microsoft and Sony are going to show is more important than what they showed last year, right? Last year, they both had the console itself to kind of rely on to just generate a massive amount of hype. Like, people want the new hardware. They obviously want to see the software. They want to see the games. But now there is no more new hardware. It's just the games. And, you know, there's no doubt, as I said, that Microsoft is going to have a lot to show. And it'll be interesting to see what Sony has been saving and what they've been working on behind the scenes. So that does it for the video, guys. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or found it informative. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.